Brittany Swedelius, and that is Brittany, last name Swedelius.
Perfect. And what do you want as your title underneath?
Graduate student, as a orientation and mobility instructor, and vision rehabilitation therapist with a certification of low vision therapy.
And we'll probably shorten that a little.
You can, yes. But it's Masters of Arts in both of those too, so.
Anyway, what we're doing is we're just making these short videos for general audiences. And so we're just interviewing people who have either different specialties or different topics that they can share their knowledge of. Now, you have some very special knowledge because of your own personal experience. So what we would like to do is welcome Brittany for our conversations with people around Montana who have experiences that they would be willing to share with our internet audience and for families around Montana. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Brittany.
Well, I grew up in Wyoming and Montana, so I'm a native of both states, and I was born with congenital aniridia, and
what is that?
That is a eye condition where I was born with no irises, and I also was born with cataracts.
So what did that mean for you?
That means that I was born legally blind, so I'm right at 2200. I've been stable, and you can compare myself to a person who's albino because I'm very light sensitive. I have light sensitivity, so.
Okay.
Yeah. But I have, like, I can see color, and I can see images, and I can read print, so I just have to have everything bigger.
Okay. So how did this impact your life as a child?
I actually didn't know that it was different until I got into elementary school, until I had maybe kids bullying me, but I didn't know any difference. And plus, the only time I really knew that it was something different was because the print got smaller as I got older, and I couldn't see the board, so I started to having some needs that I needed to get
Some help
addressed.
with.
Addressed, exactly. So, yes.
So what did they do, or what did you do?
I was about second grade when they put me into proper special education to make sure that I could read and write, and give me the accommodations that I needed to maybe see the board, or get my things enlarged, or get my books on tape. And so I had to deal with that all through, even through graduate school. So I've been dealing with it for 20 years, so.
Wow. So what worked for you? I mean, what kind of advice would you give to parents or to kids who might be dealing with some vision issues in school, like you had to?
I would start at a very, very young age. It would be the parents' responsibility to get the kids into different types of special education because they have rights to get help at a very, very young age. I think it is 3 in Montana. Maybe even at birth too.
Yeah, birth. There's a program at birth for kids.
And it's about even just stimulating the toddlers or the newborns, visually stimulating them so that they can start using their vision, because it always goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. And also, I'd be a big, strong advocate for your child to make sure that they're getting the proper accommodations, because if it's not set in place, they're not going to have it, and you're going to have more difficulty at the at the end of the road. And plus, I think it's important, and you might not even know what your accommodations are until the child gets older and they can start speaking and telling you what they need, but you need to be their advocate, and then teaching them to be their own advocate. So that's very important.
One question I've got is, how were you originally diagnosed? I mean, was it at birth or was it later?
It was, I would say, I think it was a couple months after I was born, because my eyes weren't fully developed. My eyes looked black. I didn't get any color in my eyes like a normal child would after a couple weeks. So my mom took me to a doctor, and she couldn't figure out why I was crying so much, and because my eyes didn't have a color to it. And they ended up diagnosing, they went to an encyclopedia and looked up, and the doctor thought I might have had an eye condition called aniridia, and he was right. And then they sent us down to Denver to be able to get a specialist to help us out.
So, I mean, do you do anything for the condition, or it just affects your vision?
Well, it all depends, because with aniridia is a very broad eye condition. Along with that, you can get a Wilms tumor, you can get cataracts, you can get glaucoma, you can get detached retinas. So it's all different defects that you need to be aware of, because it's not just the aniridia part of it, it's the other secondary conditions that can come along with that could cause more blindness. So if you don't under control any of that, then it could cause other problems.
Okay, so it's I mean, like, is your vision stable, or could it get worse, or has it gotten worse?
Well, I was stable up until I was a freshman in college, so I was about 18, and I could tell that my vision was decreasing, and so I was in college, and I didn't really worry about it. I was just trying to get through studies, and it was a slow progress of losing my vision between freshman year until my senior year of college. So I was working in New York, and I was having some corneal problems because my cornea hurt, and I was having some issues, and I was blurry, and my eyes were watering, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So we found a specialist out there who dealt with aniridia, and he told me that I had to get it's called limbo stem cells. I'll try to make it a little more easier to understand. So I was like, what's a stem cell? I'm not going to worry about that. So I kind of blew them off for about 3 years until my senior year, where I couldn't see anything because my cornea had scar tissue all over it. And if I would have let that progress, I would be totally blind right now. And also, the doctor told me that I couldn't do a corneal transplant, because a corneal transplant I would just scar over that corneal transplant. I had to have these stem cells to be able to regenerate my cornea so that I could keep it clean and clear, as a cornea should be.
So like keep the window clear.
Window clean, yes.
Okay, so how did that work?
I started in 2004, and I found a doctor in Cincinnati, and they ended up doing a keratolimbo allograft, is what it's called. Okay. And pretty much anatomy of your eye. If you have your cornea, and your limbus is around your cornea, and your limbus is full of blood vessels, because your cornea should not have any blood vessels in it. Okay. And the little limbo stem cells go through it, and those are what I became deficient of. I was born with them, but I became deficient of them. So what they did is they took a donor cornea from a young cadaver, and they took off the little limbo stem cells and made a graft of it. And then for me, when I went through the transplant, they took off my first layer of my cornea and graft those stem cells, a 360 all the way around. And that was the transplant, and I went from 2,600 to probably 2,200 right after I took the patch off. Right after surgery. My vision went from counting fingers to reading, 2 lines down. So.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yes. However, I had complications, and, transplants are never, it's not always perfect, and because I was on a lot of medications, because it was a transplant, so I had immunosuppressant drugs. So I was on prednisone. I was on a very high dosage of prednisone. And prednisone, if it's not under controlled, then you get glaucoma. I got secondary glaucoma, and they were watching it very closely. However, they couldn't control it, just with medications. So they ended up. I went into glaucoma surgery. So I now have glaucoma. So I have to watch that because that's pretty much a silence, deadly of blindness. So.
Right. But you've got
it under control.
Okay.
Yes, now I do. So I'm back at stable, but I've had to go and I've got both eyes done with the stem cell transplants and glaucoma, and I went in actually last week to get a patch of stem cells because sometimes some parts of the transplant becomes weak and they just have to go and do a patch of stem cells, and it's just a little sectorial, so it was easy and it was superior, up above my lid, so it's not as painful as doing a 360. So
still sounds pretty painful.
Well, I have stitches. But it was worth it because I would be totally blind now. And I said to myself before I went through this whole process, if I had 2 more years of sight, that's important to me, and that's what my parents thought. If I had 1 more day of sight, I'd rather try to keep it. And it's 3 years out, and I still can see. So.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, let's go back, and maybe you could talk a little bit about what kind of accommodations allowed you to be successful in school. Both, throughout grade school, middle school, high school, college.
Okay.
How did you? What did you use?
What I use in elementary school, I before my cataract surgery, I could get up to a page and I could see pretty close. I mean, it was a couple inches from the page, but I could read extensive. That's how I read all the way up until college. I didn't have really any adaptive stuff like magnifiers or anything like that. So, however, when my cataract started growing in my high school years, I had to get things enlarged because as if you've ever had cataracts, it becomes like double vision and it becomes blurry, so you need that magnification to help, and contrast is very important to me too. I started to use a little more books on tape in high school, but I didn't start using a lot of accommodations. I guess I would say adaptive devices in high school, except like large print and books on tape.
It was just maybe blown up on a copier?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And they would blow it up, but then also I would have note takers. More likely in high school I would have to find my own note takers because that's abnormal in high school, it seems, these days, where in college, I mean, it's pretty normal accommodations for people, not just visual impairment, but other disabilities get just...
So you did that informally, just recruiting your own...
Like friends or whatever, hey, will you write this down? Or I had really good teachers who actually wrote the notes prior of class in high school that would, like when I was in Spanish, where things could not be written down, afterwards, and you had to learn it. So my Spanish teachers accommodated, and they wrote things down for me before so I could follow along. So I didn't have a lot of accommodations. I mean, maybe having my test read to me, where I would, go out of that classroom and go to the special ed room and have the teacher read it to me. That was about it, and having extra time in high school. And then when I got into college, I knew it was going to be a lot more reading and a lot more lecture and seeing visually. So I went through state of Montana for voc rehab, and they helped me get a computer that was accessible to me and for enlargement, and I used a CCTV, a closed circuit television. So a lot of my tech...
What is that?
A closed circuit television. You have a screen, and you have a XY table that would move back and forth, and I would put my book on top of that. And because I was a very visual person, I wasn't an auditory person because I learned visually, so I had to see the words, but I also was training myself to be auditory, so I'd get my books on tape, and I also would see my book, and I could do about 40 pages. And you have to get used to those because you're going back and forth, and you're reading back and forth, and you're scanning with your eyes. So it was a lot more work than it was, but that's how I got through undergrad for my textbooks. So
what degree did you?
I got a Bachelor's of Science in Human Services.
Okay. And when was that?
I graduated in 2004. High school was 2000. So, what else I used in, I did very minimal of scanning books and reading those on my my computer. That was about my senior year when I really needed some more help, when the CCTV wasn't really helping me because my vision was going. But I'm about scanning. So programs where you can scan your books in and it can read it to you and you can see it too. So.
And that all runs on the computer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So where did you go from there?
I actually, from college, after I graduated in 2004, I ended up having surgeries, and I applied for a graduate school in New York City. It was Hunter College, and I got accepted, but I had to take a year off because of all my dozen of surgeries that I actually had to have. So, and then I started trying to search out for more schools because I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go, and New York was a little far because of all what was going on with me. And I ended up finding Western Michigan University, not even knowing anything about it. I just knew that they would provide me with a dual master's degree in orientation mobility and vision rehabilitation therapy. So,
can you explain what that is?
I know, it's so long. Orientation mobility, I did orientation mobility for adults, and that means that I could go and teach adults who are blind or visually impaired how to travel independently with a cane or different optic devices like a monocular, just to be able to travel from home to work, work to home, to the grocery store, how to go grocery shopping by yourself independently, how to maneuver around different obstacles, crossing streets.
Well, how do you do that if you have vision problems at the same time?
Yes. Well, I thought about that. That orientation mobility was actually my second degree that I wanted. I actually went into graduate school with a vision rehabilitation therapy degree. And that, let me explain that before I get into orientation mobility.
No problem.
But vision rehabilitation therapy used to be called rehab teaching. It's pretty much where I go and teach adults who are blind or visually impaired, or young adults, and I can even work with children with Braille, teaching them how to cook independently, how to clean, home maintenance, daily living skills, everything, so that they can pretty much live budgeting independently. And so I went into school doing that, but I got really fascinated about the orientation mobility part of it. And so I asked them if I could add that degree in, and they were fine with it, but they were, trying to figure out how they can adapt to me to teach me. But because I have high function vision, I don't have any problem like teaching cane skills, but it's more seeing them at a far distance, because as you teach cane skills as an instructor, you want to start moving back and back and back because you want to give that client independence. So I decided to go through my own low vision evaluation to see how I could help my other clients and how I could make this as a career. And I ended up getting bioptic telescopes, and they fit on my glasses, and I actually have them. I can show you. I should have had them out before. They're the coolest things ever. You would not catch me at 16 wearing these babies. But I'm taking the little sunglasses off. But when I get stopped by people, I tell them that I work for the FBI. Because they're so funny looking.
Yeah, you do kind of look like Geordie.
Kind of. They're not like Geordies, though.
No, it's kind of reading glasses with some kind of a weird thing on top of them.
And pretty much, these are my prescriptions through my carrier lenses. This is the telescope. This is the bioptic telescope. It's through Oputech. And pretty much the telescope sits, and it's through... The telescope sits right in front of my right eye, and that's my
so
good
one
eye.
Okay, so
Okay,
your
it's
good eye.
okay. And then the light is coming through here,
Uh-huh.
and then here's your focus point. And these actually correct me down to 20/40, and that's
Wow, that's
legal to drive. And this is new for Montana, and they've been doing this for different states. And I could get my driver's license in the state of Ohio or Michigan with these, with my vision. So.
Well, those are really cool.
So, but you have to go through some extensive driver's ed with it. So, yes, they're the coolest things and they're the hottest fashion. But I'm so desensitized to them that it doesn't even matter. Like, I'll walk around and people stare at me.
It's like, what is she doing?
Yeah,
you look very official, but yeah, you're probably just
that's
telling
why
with your Homeland Security. You're
I do
for
tell them I
bombs.
work for FBI, and that's a camera. I do tell them that, and they kind of look at me like, am I in trouble? So.
Well, those are very interesting. Wow, and that
Yes.
corrects.
I mean, you
enough
can't
for
walk,
you to
but
be
the
able
thing
to
about
drive.
it is that you can't walk around and look through there and be like, oh, I'm 20/40 now. It's all about spot checking.
Right.
Drop your head. As I drop I point my nose to the target,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I know where my nose is, I look down and my
Right.
eye should be aligned to that.
Right. Yeah, it's not like it cures your vision.
No, it
issues.
doesn't.
It's just another tool.
Right.
In the box, allows you to do orientation and
Mobility, and that's why I can, observe my client as a normal instructor at a far distance. Now, there is instructors who are totally blind, though.
Doing orientation
Yes.
and mobility. How did they do that?
They have to learn different techniques.
Oh.
They have to be observant. They have to know where their client is,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to obviously know the route very well themselves, and they have to pretty much go in front of their client to make sure that there's not going to be any hazard, and come behind them and go in front of them and behind them. Now, I've never worked with a person like that, so I don't really know exactly the whole training, but Western Michigan University has a few alumni that are totally blind orientation mobility instructors.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. Because there's different organizations in the United States that believe that their instructors should be totally blind. And that's their philosophy. So, yeah.
Wow, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So, that's it? That's the whole package?
Well, no. So I graduated in August of 2004, so that's only been 2 months ago. But I have
2007.
Oh my God, what year? Yes, let's cut that out. Okay, so I graduated in August of 2007, and but I've been on internship in the state of Ohio since January of this year, and I worked at Ohio State School for the Blind, and I did my orientation mobility instruction there. I had a really great supervisor there that taught me a lot. So I worked with kids that were in kindergarten all the way up until they were age of 22, 21, I think. I think it was 21 is how old they can be until they go, and go to high school too. So, and then in May I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and I did my vision rehabilitation therapy, and that is actually where I'm currently living right now, working on my low vision certification.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm done with my 2 degrees, but I'm finishing up my certified low vision therapy. It's a 350-hour internship on top of all my other education behind me, and sit for 3 exams, and here I am.
So when are you going to be done?
I'm hoping to be done by like February or January of this year, 2008. So
coming soon.
coming soon. I'm
months.
trying to get my hours done in Ohio and then try to find a job
Mm-hmm.
that will take me.
So I assume you're already on the hunt for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm applying for multiple jobs.
Okay. So you don't know where you're going to end up?
No.
No? Any place that you prefer?
Well, let's just say there's a lot of jobs out there
Uh-huh.
because this field of blindness is there's going to be a huge turnover because the people who started, it goes down from the VA, the veterans hospitals, and then they moved into universities in the 1960s. That's why Western Michigan University started in 1963, and they actually have the most graduates and the longest standing, because Boston College was like 1961, and they were the first, but they have closed that program. So there's going to be a huge turnover between the people who started in 1960 and now, and covering all those jobs. So it's a good education. Good, it's a very opening and starting, fields of work in a career. So there's a lot of jobs out there and start opening.
Wow, that's excellent. What kind of, we talked a little bit, but what kind of advice do you give to kids who are, experience some kind of vision issues? Like in Montana, where we don't have a lot of resources, or you might be isolated, and the families might not understand the ramifications or what the needs are. What kind of advice would you give them?
And that's kind of hard too, because we need people in the state of Montana. Because we have the education part of it, we're very limited on the teachers for the visually impaired. We're lucky that District 2 actually now has, I think, 3 TCVIs, versus when I was going through school there was only 1 that was doing
here in Billings.
Here in Billings. But my advice is to research. If you're in little town in Montana where there's no services, it's a resource in trying to contact the State School for the Blind, because then they can bring a person out to you and help you figure out what your child's needs are. And then it goes, starting that whole process of figuring out the child support team and getting that started and getting their, I think, was it that family independent plan, and try to get all of that started, so then when they hit mainstream school, because more likely they're going to go to mainstream school, that they will have their needs set in place before they even start.
Start early.
Start early, yes. And be educated. Research. There's so much stuff on the internet now that you can find a lot of information. In the schools, obviously, a good place to start.
Okay. Well, any last words that you'd like to share with the audience?
No.
No?
I don't.
Do you want to show what you use on the computer?
Sure. This is a program. It's called ZoomText.
Okay. Yeah, we can kind of see it there.
Kind of. Okay.
Maybe reverse the contrast, and I think we'll be able to see it a little better.
And what we can do is I'm going to... Oops. I need to put the sound up here so we can hear it.
One more to the right. There you go.
89%, 82%.
Would that be too loud?
No, that's good.
Okay. So we have voice on here too. And we have
Windows Zoom magnifier tab.
We have a magnifier tab. And we can change the contrast of the screen.
Color enhancements menu open. Scheme invert brightness for shortcut use B.
Oh yeah. So that's a lot easier to see for you.
Right. So then the white doesn't give you that glare coming, to your eyes, and a lot of people prefer this negative or contrast, high contrast.
And you're using some specialized software there to be able to do this?
Yes. And this is called ZoomText. So, and then we can also enlarge the screen.
3, 4x, 5x, 6x, 7x, 8x, 10x.
So it gets pretty big. And of course, if we're getting too big for something, it's more, there's other software out there that people who are totally blind or have very, very severe vision loss, they can use it. It's called JAWS, and you can use everything. You don't even need a screen. You just need speakers and a keyboard where you do all your commands, and you can do everything a normal person can do, a sighted person.
8, 7,
That's really
6,
amazing.
5,
So do you
3x.
do most of your work on the computer? using
Oh
it?
yes, I mean my computer is my life.
Okay.
Like I told you, I scan all my books into my computer when I went to school. Internet, I mean, everything. Put my pictures on there. I mean, it's my center. So it keeps everything that I can do, so I don't even have to haul all those books that everybody else have to, you know.
Okay. So you carry around a laptop?
Yes, that weighs about 15 pounds. Because it's a widescreen.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you taking the time today,
Yep.
Brittany, to talk with us. And whenever you're back in town, maybe we can talk again and
Wonderful.
catch up.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.